The reason why we are here is because we're standing in the shoulders of giants. Somebody did something for us along the way. Somebody opened the door. So it's now our time to open the doors for the next generation.
Welcome to Latinx Can, a podcast showcasing Latinx professionals who turn their dreams into realities. I'm your host, La Doctora Jenire Flores Delgado, and today I'm here with Dr. Charlie Corredor, an entrepreneur who identified the power of mentorships and used it to represent the Latinx community around the world. And he's here to tell you, sí se puede, my friends, sí se puede. Dr. Charlie Corredor, welcome to Latinx Can.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Really honored to be here in front of you. Well, virtually nowadays, but...
Yeah, the honor is ours. You have a great story and experience that I think our listeners can really benefit from. So let's start by talking a little bit about yourself and where your story begins.
I probably have a story that might resonate with a lot of the audience on the podcast, that I'm coming from a place where both of my parents were immigrants when they moved to the United States. So my parents both are Colombian. They came to the United States around the 1983-ish time frame. They moved to California because they were looking for a better place to live. They were aiming for the American dream at the time. So that was the place that I was born. I was born in California, Riverside, to be more specific. And around 5 years after I was born, both of my parents decided to move back to Colombia. So of course, I followed them, and they took me to Colombia. So I spent a big portion of my life living in Colombia. But during the same time, we had family in Spain, and we used to go to Spain quite often. So it was kind of like this hybrid situation, and we're spending, summers and falls in Spain and the rest of the year in Colombia. Yeah, it was really interesting. And around 17 years old, when I finished my high school, I got to the point that I needed to do something with my life like everybody else, and goes through that question of, what is next? And I was listening to the radio, and my mom and my grandmother in the house, they were asking me, okay, what do you want to do? What do you want to study? And in the back of the kitchen, it was Frank Sinatra singing the song, New York, New York. And I said to both of my grandmother and my mom, I said, I'm going to New York. And they were like, what? They were not expecting that answer. So that was kind of like the first thing that came through my mind, and serendipity happened. My mom had friends that they were living in New York. They were so nice that they opened their home for me. I stayed with them for around 4 to 5 months, the settling time. And that's how I ended up back in the U.S.
Wow, that's an amazing story. And it's definitely having parents who are immigrants in the States. It's familiar with a lot of people, right? But you basically grew up in Colombia, but while still being a U.S. citizen. How did it feel like when you then at 17 years old come back to the States?
Number one, I moved by myself. So I didn't have the support system of your parents. They were really supportive, right? Like we used to talk every day, at least twice a day. So we went through this attachment phase together. So it was really good. And having that family that opened the doors for me here in New York was extremely valuable. So I am grateful and thankful for what both, groups of people did for me. Like my parents were supporting me, encouraging me, and seeing the potential that I had. Because, when you're 17 years old, to be honest, you're a kid.
Yeah.
You have some vision for what you want to do, but the steps needed to accomplish that goal were not there.
Yeah.
So it was difficult to move back to the US. It was not an easy task, but as I said originally when we started this conversation, I live in Europe for a couple of years. If you combine all the summers and falls that I spent in Spain, that opportunity allowed me to become really moldable and adjust my personality and the type of behaviors that I need to take to become a part of the society or the new country. So that also was a good push for me.
That's a great point. Actually, I can see some similarities with my story as well, because I left Venezuela when I was 17, turning 18, right? And different situation in which I got to Eswatini, then called Swaziland in Southern Africa by myself, but I had a huge support system because I was going to the school that was a boarding school, right? So we had everything. I already knew, but, that didn't make it less difficult to sort of detach yourself from your family. And I was a very independent person already because I did gymnastics. And so I used to travel by myself around the country, much like maybe what when you went to Europe, I don't know if by yourself, but those things really definitely help. One thing though that made this situation more relatable to me is that at that very early age, you figure out what you need to do, right? Like you're still, like you said, very moldable. You still, your value system, your belief system, you have a strong foundation, but you can still learn new things. And I can imagine how that is probably very useful to have in a city like New York. New York is a hard city to live in.
Yes,
I loved it. I had an opportunity to live there a couple of years ago. And it's this mix, right? Where you have opportunities, yes, but it's also very, very, very tough. Then on the other side, you have this very diverse environment where you can really find your crew that's going to help you and that's going to, support you through your goals. I understand that when you went to New York, eventually you realized that you wanted to go to college, right? How was that process for you, not having that support system?
Yeah. So you're bringing good points. New York is a city, and, as Uncle Frank Sinatra says, it will make you or break you, right? And it is a place where, the concrete jungle, right? It's everybody for themselves, but at the same time, people are warm. They're able to, open their homes, and if the New Yorker, the true New Yorker, or people who live in New York for a long time, if they say they like you, they truly mean it. And they will do anything for you. They will fight for you. They will defend you, and they will guide you through the steps that they took to get to where they are. So with that in mind, going through the application process of college, I knew that I wanted to study some type of engineering, some type of science in the STEM field. And, when you're new in a country, and when you're new into a state, you start looking into universities, right? And the first one that came through my radar was the NYU, because brick marketing campaigns, their logos are everywhere in New York City. And, it was in downtown New York, like 14th Street. And I was like, okay, well, I think I can apply. And I did. I got into NYU. But once I went through the financial office to, pay my bill, because I had a little bit of money saved, I saw the bill, and when I read the bill, I think it said $4,000 or so. But in reality, when I went to pay the bill, I brought a check for $4,000. The lady at the front desk, and she looked at me and she just started laughing. And I was like, "What is so funny?" She said, "It's not 4,000, it's 40,000, because it includes board and room, room and board." So clearly, I didn't have the means to get to that level. But right away, I said, "Okay, I know that I wanted to study. I know that higher education was a big step for me to get to the point that I want to be." And I said, "Who I need to talk to see if there anywhere else that I can go." She pointed me to talk to another person. And I think he was an advisor or some type of person that helps students. And he mentioned, Charlie, how about you apply for City College of New York, part of the City University school system? I was like, I never heard about that school. And then he started telling me that City College has the reputation of producing really great scientists and engineers. Andy Grove, from the co-founder of Intel, graduated as a chemical engineer from City College of New York, who passed away just a couple of years ago. So really sad to hear that he left us. Colin Powell also graduated from City College of New York, and many other really, powerful and impactful leaders that have pushed the boundaries of humankind and, industries that have made us bring technology to where we are right now. So hearing that, I just took the train from, 14th Street, and I just went all the way up to 145th and Convent. And I get off from the train, and I just went straight to the admin office, admissions. And I said, okay, I want to apply. And, as Celia Cruz said in her line, my English is not very good looking at the time. I tried to explain to them that I wanted to get into school. I didn't have the money, but I was really interested. The lady that helped me, she said, this is the application, submit it. You have until tomorrow if you really want to be considered for this cycle. I was like, okay. I went back to the apartment that I was living on and submit the application with the support of the people that I was living with. They helped me out to fill the application process and submit it. I was really on the edge, and I got in. I got into City College of New York, and that was the beginning of my education in the STEM field.
Wow. I can understand how difficult it is just to put an application in, right, for college. But more difficult is to understand what options you have out there, especially for people like you that didn't have a lot of people in their family that had already gone through the process, which is the case for many Latinx people growing up in this country, right? And it's part of the reason why we want to do this podcast, because the information is out there, but it's not easy to find. And if you can talk to somebody who can guide you, or if you can hear about these opportunities somewhere, it can make your process a little easier, and just a little easier will give you more chances of success.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You couldn't say it better. Having somebody who went through their rodeo and went through the fight and show you the path that they take is extremely valuable. And I was the first generation of my family to go to college, first generation to go to college overseas, the first generation to go through grad school. And this is what I'm really excited about this podcast, because you give the platform for people to listen to stories and find what is the nuggets of gold or good information, and taking those 2 cents and apply them for their lives. This is something that I'm really personally and professionally passionate about, opening the doors for the next generation of scientists and engineers. I cannot emphasize this enough, because the reason why we are here is because we're standing in the shoulders of giants. Somebody did something for us along the way. Somebody opened the door. Yeah. So it's now our time to open the doors for the next generation. It's now our time to help them to get to this next step where they need to go, because that's the only way.
Yeah. And it's not that we're few, right? Like, we're not few Latinx professionals out there. It's just that people don't take us seriously sometimes. And sometimes we just blend in the masses, but we're here and we definitely have some knowledge that they're willing to share and support the next generation. So that being said, when you did get into the City College of New York, you still had to pay for some of that, tuition, which is still expensive. How did you manage to get that money?
City College of New York is one of those institutions that it is affordable. You get great educational services, and it is one of the schools that you will get a lot of bang for the buck. And the first semester, I pay for the full, tuition, which was around the time, I think it was like $1,500 or $2,000. I can't remember the actual numbers. Yes, it was a lot of money for me. But as I said, I had some money saved that my parents gave me, and I worked a little bit before, applying to school. So I was saving some cash in that sense as well. And I paid for the first semester. Moving forward, I realized that, it was not $40,000, but I needed to figure out a way for me and avenues for me to, look for support. And that's what my first goal was. My goal at the time was to make sure that I don't pay for any educational, expenses. And I got into many things. I applied to scholarships. I started getting involved with research. I started getting support as a minority. I started getting support as somebody who wants to break into a field that we don't have many of us around. And, the school gave me that opportunity. I'm grateful and thankful for the support that the college gave me, the Pell Grants, any type of little pockets of money that I was able to collect. I was applying and I was getting the foot into the door.
Yeah. And then it's about that, right? Like it's about applying to absolutely everything that you can see and finding more out there, because you never know. A lot of those opportunities go wasted. Nobody applies for. So even if you don't meet all the criteria, you should still apply. You lose some time. Okay, fine. But you could gain $1,000. That makes a difference, right? And let's talk a little bit about those research opportunities that you engaged with when you were at the City College of New York.
Yeah. So at City College is the research that they do is really innovative, and they believe in empowering the students. They believe in giving the opportunity to the students. Majority, I would like to say probably 95% of the professors that do research want to engage with the student population to train them and allow them to succeed in whatever field they want to get into. So one of the first chemistry classes that I took, the professor who was teaching the class was Ronald Berg. And he was a professor that was doing physical chemistry research. He was trying to understand how molecules vibrate under a given applied optical field, so lasers, right? And he was doing the theoretical part of the research. And I went to his office during one of the office hours, and I asked him a couple of questions, kind of like to break into the ice. I was like, oh, I'm trying to do the homework. How about this? How about that? And then I said, well, I know that you have a lab. Do you need any help? And that was the way that I broke into his lab. And I said, hey, Dr. Berg, I'm here on Thursdays afternoon. Either way, I can either be downstairs in the rotunda, which is kind of like the area where all the students hang out, or I can be in your lab helping you out to do whatever you need. And he was grateful enough to say, yes, all right, I like it. Come here and we'll find something for you to do. The first couple days, I was cleaning glassware, because there was nothing to do.
And we all start there.
Even as a researcher. I started cleaning the glassware and organizing and learning, the instrumentation and, understanding what computer platforms they're using at the time, and connecting with the postdoctoral student that he had. And during the time, another professor walked into the lab. His name was John Lombardi. John Lombardi is the experimental side of Ronald Berg's research. So the two of them worked together, both theoretically and experimentally, to prove the theories behind this molecular movement and vibrational modes. So I started talking with John, and the two of us, we click, and he said, Charlie, I think that you will be good doing theory, but I can see the potential of you doing actual experimental research. The way that you think, the way that you see the world, the way that you want to push the boundaries, it will help us in the research part, experimental research, to the work that we're doing. And that's what I did. I moved from theoretical research to experimental work. And I started doing the work with him. He created partnerships with the Metropolitan Museum of Art. He created partnerships with the NYPD Crime Lab. He got a grant that helped me to pay for school and get some funding. So I was getting paid, and I was doing really interesting work during my time at City College. I had the opportunity to work at the Metropolitan Museum of Art to develop processes and technologies to quantify and characterize artwork. We published the work. I think at around the time that I finished my research with him, I had around 4 peer-reviewed scientific publications out of the undergrad.
Wow.
which two of them I was the lead author. I presented in multiple national and international conferences, so it gave me the opportunity to showcase and share with the scientific community the research that a undergrad student was doing. And of course, it was all guided by him. One of the things that I remember a lot he's saying is like, show me data. That was his thing. Show me the data. Show me the data.
Right.
And the way for you to collect data is to spend time, work hard, understand what you're doing, and develop processes so it becomes more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. Always asking what if, right? What if this? What if that? And if it doesn't work, 99% of the things that you try in the lab don't work. So 99% of the time you're working on failures anyway, but it builds character, right? And it also builds that excitement when something works. It's like, whoa, you're over the moon because something worked and you can prove it and nobody else knows how it works besides you. So it's so exciting. It really is.
And one of the things that I remember just recently, I heard from one of my mentors / good friends. He said, invention doesn't occur without experiments, right? And experiments, usually 90% of them, they fail. So you have to be okay with it. Be in the failure mode. But once you succeed, take what you learn, kind of like what you said, take what you learn and apply for the wins. So, and that's how you invent and reinvent.
Yeah.
Right.
That's great. And Charlie, one other thing that you really knew, I don't know if intentional or not, when you were in undergrad, is having your personal brand, making sure that you showed up to the world as the best version of yourself. And some of your colleagues back then used to make fun of you for always bringing a business card and giving it to everybody that you met. Tell us a little bit about that. Were you intentional? Did you know at the time that this is something that you needed to build up your career? How do you go about that?
Yeah, you mentioned a good point here that having your brand, and it will make you stand up and it will make you differentiate out of the pack. So during my time doing research early at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, I had a good mentor there. His name is Marco Leona. Marco Leona is the chief scientist at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and he is an Italian scientist. And he has that flair of the Italians, right? Like that way that they behave. And I started capturing a lot of things that he used to do. I was observing and taking notes and see how the things that I liked that he was doing can apply to myself. And one of them was that he always carried business cards on his pocket. So every time we went from a floor to another floor, he met somebody new to show our research. And this is what we're doing. He used to pull out his business card and say, like, this is me, Marco Leona. And I said, wow, that's powerful. And guess what I did? I went straight down to Kinko's and I print out a business card that says Charlie Corredor, undergraduate research assistant or undergraduate researcher, with my email and my phone number. That was it. And everywhere that I went, as you described it, was, this is me. This is my phone number. If you need anything that I can help you with, please reach out to me. I'm willing to make time to help you. And in fact, in one of those events, I met somebody that was running an undergraduate research experience. That it was a program funded by the NSF.
Yep.
His name was Dr. Claude Brathwaite. He was part of the City College of New York, and he was running this program that it was funded by the National Science Foundation. And he right away, he said, to quote him, he's like, who is this guy? Who is this young researcher giving me his business card? He didn't even ask me for mine, and he's giving me his. And that kind of like created a mark on who I am. And long story short, we came across another event, and he's like, how are you doing? You are the guy with the business cards. He's like, yes, that is me. Yeah. He's like, I have this opportunity. Will you be interested to go and do research, abroad? I was like, sure. He said, like, what are you doing this summer? And it was like around February when he mentioned that, or December, I can't remember. And I was like, well, I'm not going to, I don't know. I'm probably going to be working either in the lab or during my side hustle that I had. Yeah. Because I was living in New York. It's really expensive. So I needed to pay for that. And he's like, how about you go to China? Wow. I was like, China? I was like, yeah. Your professor, John Lombardi, has a big partner at Jillian University. And if you can propose a plan and propose the research that you want to do in China, we will sponsor you. We will give you the economic support for you to travel overseas. And just by saying that, I was like, all right, we have a plan now. We have a goal. And my goal that year was to go to China.
Wow.
So ran to the lab and I told him that Dr. Lombardi is like, Dr. Lombardi, do you know Dr. Brathwaite? And he was like, yeah, he does this and he does that. I was like, well, he told me that I can apply to his program and I can go to China. I'm really excited. He was like, I didn't know you want to go to China. I was like, yes, I want to go to China.
I want to go anywhere.
I want to go anywhere. And that's what happened. We created the plan. We created the steps and the milestones that I needed to accomplish. We proposed a plan. We contacted the researchers and the labs that I want to be working in China. They were great. That was an excellent experience. That was my first time that I encountered and understand how research is being done at the global scale, how technology development is done at the global scale, and how culture can be bridged by science. Right? Mm-hmm. Different cultural, behaviors can be bridged by science and research because we all speak the same language, right? So when there, I spent around 5 months or so living in China, and it was a great experience. I was developing these small particles using a light source. So at the time, we used to call them quantum dots. Nowadays, there's called nanoparticles. And this unique approach that we took, it was to produce these small particles for mass production. So we're using a light source to convert a solution into particles, and you can control the shape, the morphology, the amount, the particles that you produce just by changing the light intensity and the light wavelength. We published 2 papers out of that work. Came back to the US, continued doing the work that I was doing with John. Then around December, I said, Dr. Brathwaite, do you have another opportunity? I reached out to him again. He was like, this is me, Charlie, the guy with the business card. This was the outcome of the work that we did in China. Successfully, we published this. Successfully, we did this. The partnership was created. I nurture and maintained a relationship with the Chinese researchers and professors. He said, the chemical engineering department is putting something similar as the one that you did in China, but for Sweden. And I was like, do I need to do the same thing again? He's like, let's go for it. And, went and I lived in Sweden for another 5 months. This was with a cohort with students. So we were around 5 undergraduate students that were, exchanged, for lack of a better word, to the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, Sweden.
Wow.
Great experience to live in the Nordic countries, understand their culture. We were there the tail end of the spring, beginning of the fall. So we were in the most beautiful place during the most beautiful time. And we had 20
hours of sunshine.
That's exactly right. 20 hours of sunshine. People were happy. They were, people drinking in parks, people having fun. People loved doing research. I was working in a lab where we were doing synthesis for batteries, for energy storage. That it was a partnership with Nokia. Was the work that we did there. We did great work. Then I came back to the US. Same story. I was already a junior in college, I think it was. I said, okay, Dr. Brathwaite, here again, where we going this year? They're like, how about you go to France? And packed my bags the next, spring, and I went to work at the UPNC, University of Marie and Pierre Curie.
Wow.
Lived in Paris for around the same amount of time. Work in synthesis of coatings for nuclear reactors. Great opportunity. Lived in France, traveled Europe, went to visit family in Spain, and came back to the US with that global experience and expertise that allowed me to see myself as a global researcher and scientist and engineer.
Yeah, invaluable experience, right? And what I can take from that is that, first of all, you make sure that that you presented the best version of yourself everywhere you went, and that created opportunities for you. But you also weren't scared of knocking on that door again, right? Like you're like, okay, I'm here, I'm doing a good job, and I'm going to show them that I did a good job, and I'm going to go back there and see what else is out there. So, I think that's so important, right? Like, I don't know if everybody feels like that, but sometimes I feel like that a little bit, in that, I got an opportunity from somebody and I'm incredibly grateful, but also feel like, oh, I can't ask them again for help, because what if they, feel that I'm asking for too much? And, I think it's up to them to decide that, right? Maybe you can still try. And then if they can't help you, then let them make that decision, but don't stop yourself short of that opportunity because of fear. Not that I practice that all the time, but I think that's theoretically the way that you do it. And that's definitely the way that you did it.
You miss every shot that you don't take, right? And I'm not going to lie, there were many times that I felt the imposter syndrome, right? Like, what do I know?
Yeah.
And I'm here doing research with one of the best scientists in China. Who am I to be doing research in a project sponsored by Nokia? Who am I to be working in the next coding for nuclear reactors in France? And, hanging out with, in the same university where, the inventor of nuclear theory was there. I mean, like Marie and Pierre Curie, just walking through those same hallways that they did. It's just, yes, it's the imposter syndrome. It happens, but you need to recognize the value that you bring. You need to recognize that you should be there, and it is a reason why you are there. And so do a great job, open the doors for the next generation, leave a good mark. That's what we should do.
And the other thing is that these opportunities out there are available to everybody, right? Not just to people who have connections, but anybody who's studying undergrad right now, they can apply for REUs in the States or abroad, and try as many as you can, start as early as you can, because it didn't cost you anything, right? They paid for everything, and then you gain invaluable experience that then prepared you to move on to the next stage of your career, right? And that next stage for you was enrolling into a PhD program at Arizona State University, right? So tell us a little bit about that experience, because you got a little twist in the plot when you were there.
Yeah. So as you said, I apply, senior year, I started applying to grad school because there were two main factors why I went to grad school. I graduated around 2010, and I love to do research. I love to, work in what is next. And I don't know if you guys recall that 2010, the economy was, we were not doing that well. The job market was not that appealing. And although I had one job offer to go work in a nuclear reactor, I knew that I wanted to continue to develop my intellectual and engineering professional development to, instead of solving problems, is just develop the intellectual merit to be able to ask the questions that they are needed to solve the problems and learn how to learn. Because at the end of the day, when you go to grad school, especially when you're doing a PhD, one of the things that you learn really well is to learn how to learn. Become an expert in a given field in a short period of time. So yes, I applied to my grad school. I applied to Rice, UF, the UC system. Arizona State was my safety school, and other ones that they're just escaping out of my head. So when you go to apply to grad school, the schools, they invite you to go and visit the campus and get to know the professors and get to know the labs and really talk to the student body that they're doing the PhDs to see if you see a match. Is an alignment or is not an alignment? So during the visits, I went to Arizona State and I met this professor. His name is Jonathan Posner. And Jonathan Posner was one of the ones that really caught my attention. He was a professor that it was in the process of getting his tenure at Arizona State. Their research seemed really interesting, but most importantly, I like him as a person. My mentor in undergrad, John Lombardi, he said to me, once you start looking for a grad school and a professor, make sure you like that professor the same or more than a partner, meaning a wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, because the average marriage in the US is around 5 years. Grad school is 4.5. So you better like that person around the same ballpark that you would like your partner to be. Because if that person is going to email you, he's going to call you, he's going to text you at midnight. And if you don't like that person, because he's going to make your life really
They have
difficult.
control of your life for a really long time.
Yeah, it's 4 years of your life, 3.5 for some of us. They don't have control, but they are the support group that you need to learn how to learn and become better and become an expert. Mm-hmm. So I like him a lot. A lot of the things that he said was really connected with me. And, Arizona State was not in the rankings of chemical engineering is a great school. They do great research. The labs were fantastic, but the rankings were not compared to Rice or not compared to UF. Yeah. But I took the chance. I took the risk because I knew I liked him. And I liked the people that was working in his lab. He assembled a really high performance team. And he was a great leader that gave the freedom to operate and discover and ask the right questions, because that's what you do when you're doing research. His role was kind of like, imagine a little enterprise. He was the CEO of the company and we were his VPs, his vice presidents of research, doing innovation within the goals that he had proposed. And usually the research goals comes from funding. So I like him a lot. And I joined Arizona State, moved there. And 6 months or 7 months within my time in Arizona, I was finally settling, trying to understand and, where is the right place to park? Where is a good restaurant? Where is a good bar to go as a student? Where I can buy my food? He came and he assembled the team and he said, guys, I have an offer, and I accepted an offer to move the University of Washington. And I want you to come with me.
Did he not invite everybody?
He invited the students that were either in the middle of the career or starting the career. He offered the people that, were a little bit ahead to either stay or come with him. But at the end of the day, we only were 3 of us that we negotiated with the school, not with him, but with the school. And we just came and joined his lab. So 3 students out of the group of 12 or so moved with him. We set up the lab. It was a big change. So we went from the sunny state of Arizona to the rainy state of, the rainy city of Seattle. It was a 180 change. But personally, I evaluated and I discussed with the fiance at the time, now my wife, that, we wanted to be in a place where we both can grow. Seattle is known to be a city of technology. Amazon was coming up. Microsoft was here. Boeing is of the big players here. Google was putting their footprint. Apple was creating acquiring companies. So we saw a potential synergy. And also, the University of Washington has something that was really appealing to me at the time, which was that the University of Washington has a big footprint in healthcare. So the medical school, UW-MC Medical Center, has a big presence in the Pacific Northwest. And I wanted to take engineering into healthcare innovation nexus, right? Like that interface, that edge. So moved to Washington with him. The first 6 months, we were just setting up the lab, making sure that we help him with the recruitment of new students, because we needed to revamp the hiring of this great group of scientists. And yeah, we came here. The University of Washington, of course, have higher rankings that ASU, and I'm proud to say that I'm both. I started as a Sun Devil, and I ended up as a Husky.
And this is something that I didn't know happened, but it happens often, right? And it doesn't happen to everybody, but it's something really important to know when you are selecting that group, right? Like you want to have a good relationship with your advisor, but also understand, do they have tenure? Do they not have tenure? Are they early in their career? What's going to happen to their future? Because that's going to affect your future as well. And then if that happens, then like you said, reassess your priorities and understand what is it that you need, what is it that you like, and if it works for you, you take the leap with them. And if not, it also works out for the people who stay behind, right? Like the university helps them continue their degree, but it's definitely something that is worth thinking about when you're applying to grad school, and something that I don't think many people know, or at least I didn't know when I applied for grad school and I tried to select the places where I was going to go.
That's exactly right. And things change. Life always changes, and you have to be ready to adapt. I knew that when I went to Arizona State, I went because I like him, and I couldn't care where he was. He could be in Stanford. He could be in the University of Alaska. I was most likely going to follow him.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And that's what I did. And life took me to Seattle, to the University of Washington, and I'm really happy about the outcome. Serendipity.
And Charlie, while you were in grad school, you became an entrepreneur yourself, and you created your own startup, and that became a huge part of your career. Tell us a little bit about your startup and also about what it takes to create an enterprise like that.
My last 2 years of grad school were really unique. So during grad school, I was fortunate enough to receive 2 of the most prestigious fellowships that gave me the freedom and flexibility to work on the stuff that I wanted to do. So I received the National Science Foundation Fellowship, as well as the National Academy of Science Ford Fellowship. And both of them kind of like gave me that support, economic support and flexibility to do and tailor my academic research and develop the educational development into the path that I wanted to do. In fact, while I was doing my dual PhD in chemical engineering, nanotechnology, and molecular engineering, I had the opportunity to join the Foster School of Business for a business certificate degree, which is, if I can name it, or if I can put a description around the program, is around 75% of the courses that an executive MBA will take. I took those courses. So that gave me both the understanding of what it takes to translate a technology into a business. Gave me the connections, gave me the understand the lingo, understand what it takes, the steps that it needs to take. And, I knew that I wanted to do something in health and science. And the lab that I was part of, one of the team members, which we had a great team, the 3 of us, we went through the business plan competition. So a lot of schools, they do this business plans competitions, in where you can take an idea, a project, and run with it and explore and see if it's a market fit. So the 3 PhD students and myself as a PhD/MBA, if you want to put me that title, went through the process, and we won the business plan competition. We won some good money through the business plan competitions, which allow us to do a couple things. Number one, we validated that the idea that we were taking together out of the research lab that I was part of had some legs, and we went through the customer discovery phase. So we went and asked, clinicians, what do you want to do? What do you need? What are your pain points? Tell us what you need, and we will build it. Because we engineers, and at the time product developers, that's what we do. We solve problems, and we assemble this technology that, in reality, what it does is concentrate and separate the stuff that you don't want to detect, and we put it around a point of care diagnostic tool. And the company, we went through a business plan. It changed names once or twice, and we, at the end of the day, the company was called Pharisa. Pharisa stands from electrophoresis, and Pharisa,
cool.
and that's the core technology, electrophoresis. So we were using a paper-based diagnostic tool to detect for infectious diseases. And within the infectious diseases umbrella, we were detecting for STIs, so chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis. And the goal was to provide a pregnancy-style test so doctors can detect and treat the patient in a single visit. So our affordable test, sensitive test, and rapid test can solve the big pain points that clinical personnel has when it comes to diagnosis of STIs. Assembled a team, we raised capital, got a lab, space. The founding team of Pharisa was a researcher, another PhD student. His name is Mark Borziak, my professor and partner in crime, Jonathan Posner, and the vice chair of the UW Medicine, Family Medicine, Matthew Thompson, because we needed to have the clinical expertise that he brought into the table. So you need to recognize when you are assembling any type of team, the things that you're good at and the things that you're not too good at. So you can balance them out with assembling the team that can, complement each other. And, we did great. We did great. We put the business around. The technology was showing some progress along the way when we were raising capital. Unfortunately, we found a major flaw in the card technology, which in reality didn't allow us to scale up fast enough. And when you're building a startup, the biggest enemy that you have for any startup is time.
Yeah.
And you need to move fast. You need to, adapt, be dynamic, be fluid. And the technology didn't meet the expectations of the customer. Those three principles that I mentioned at the beginning, affordability, sensitivity, and speed.
Yeah.
The speed was not there. So with those three pillars, if you don't meet those three pillars, the user is not going to use your product. You're not going to sell the product. The company is not going to be successful. So therefore, you're not building a company / a startup. You have a science project in your hands. So, as a team, we decided that the right thing to do was to return the money back to the investors. Return all the money back to the investors, return all the money, a portion of the funds that we collected through non-dilutive funds like the National Science Foundation, SBIR programs. We got a grant through them, and other nonprofit foundations that help us out they gave us resources to continue the development. So we gave a portion of the money back to them. And we give all the money back to the investors. That, a lot of we got mixed signals from some of these investors because, in fact, some of them were like, "Can we give you more money at the same valuation?" Is it because you don't want our money? Is it? They were committed, but you need to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And overall, integrity and honesty. And as a scientist, you need to follow the data.
Yeah.
The data doesn't lie.
Back like your undergraduate advisor, right?
Just like my undergraduate advisor. What is the data? What is the data? What is the data? And that was a painful process. Let me tell you, it was not easy. You invest 2+ years of your life. You eat, breathe, and believe that you're doing something good. You bring the vision and mission into a team that believes and see what you see. And at the end of the day, you need to take the dog to the back of the barn and, say goodbye.
Yeah. It's a baby, right? It's like having a baby is your child. It's the fruit of the labor that you put in. And it must be a very, very difficult decision to take because it's hard to give up or to work in the lab and understand that something doesn't work and you have to change course. Now, having money in the bank and having support from other people, it must be, 10 times harder to make that decision. But then the other thing I see from that story is that what you said, integrity, right? Like we are scientists and yes, we want to make money out of the things that we invent and that we create. But before everything else, we are scientists and we have a commitment and an ethical paradigm that we have to follow, right? And so that's part of the things that sort of make me a little frustrated with the distrust that people have with science and scientists in general that we see nowadays. And it's like, you don't really understand that, when we say that something works and when we tell you that, GMOs are safe to use, for example, we have put in the work, and the moment that we realize that something is not like we believed it was, we say so, yes, there might be very few people who choose to benefit from the situation, but the vast majority of the scientists really hold on to that standard, right? In that we don't do harm, we don't want to do harm to people, and we do want these products that we invent to make our lives better, not worse.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, data talks. Granted, there were moments in during the closing of Farisa that we said, hey, we have the money in the bank. How about we just run with the money? But, as a team, we realized that that's not the right thing to do. The core technology at the time was not going to work, and is enough risk that you do to build a startup. The success rate for the startups is around 10 to 20% of the startups that you build and assemble makes it. That's the return rate for VCs, right?
Yeah.
The ROI. So now, if you know that the technology is not going to work, what is the success rate that you have? You're not 10% anymore. You're probably 2%, 1%, 0.1%. And you need to recognize that we couldn't, as a team, we couldn't hire more people and keep growing and bringing more people into the fight if we knew that the technology was not going to work. So, we had great support. Our lead investor, they saw that we were doing the right thing. They were so grateful that we didn't take their money and spend it and burn the money and use it to buy, expensive equipment or taking trips or whatever it might be. The entrepreneurial community is really small. Let me tell you, it's really small. And any field is really small. When you embed yourself into the ecosystem, you start learning the key players. And during the time, one of the persons that I was really admiring, and I still admire, is Caitlin Cameron. Caitlin Cameron is a serial entrepreneur in the Seattle Pacific Northwest community. And she was one of my mentors when I was starting Foriza. I was asking her a lot of business questions. She was that sounding board that, she has gone through the ring once or twice, and she was helping me to assemble and create this great business plan and great company that we were putting together. In fact, when we closed the company, we took some time to decompress. A lot of the team members that we had at Foriza, they found the next opportunities. We got people working at Intel. We got people working at Starbucks. The professors went to work full time for the university. The medical doctor went back to University of Washington Medical School. And we all are still friends and colleagues. We are a family. The Foriza family. But, it was time for me to look for my next challenge, right? And my lead investor said, talk to Caitlin. Go back to talk to Caitlin. And that's what I did. I went to talk to Caitlin, and she saw that I was open for my next challenge. He just said, Charlie, I need somebody like you on my team. Somebody with your academic, scientific, technical background, but also has great integrity and love to solve complex problems. And she didn't have a role for me, a title at the time, because it was a late stage startup. I think we were around 7 people working in the team and around 5 subcontractors or so when I joined Autonexus Medical Technologies. And she hired me because who I am. She hired me because my principles and the ability for me to solve complex problems and always think outside of the box, my creativity. Taking that, at the end of the day, the time went through and my role was shaping into operations/research and product development. So the title that I ended up getting for the company was the vice president of operations. But at the end of the day, titles for startups, they're really fluid.
Everybody does everything.
Everybody does everything.
We just need to make it work.
Exactly. You wear multiple hats. You solve the problem that is there. You take ownership. Is always everybody's problem. So therefore you should solve it at the time, and always thinking ahead, always look around the corners. So I joined Autonexus, spent around 2.5 years working with them. During my time there, we reassembled the team. We hired more people. We created a lab facility. We received phase 1 and phase 2 for SBIR programs out of the National Institute of Health and the National Science Foundation. I was spearheading those efforts with the CTO. I helped Caitlin, the CEO, to raise capital from venture firms. That was part also of my job. We raised together Series B, and, it was a great opportunity.
It seems like you were a well-rounded contributor to that team, right? Not only from your experience with the technology and raising money and having gone through your own process of funding series, but also knowing this knowledge of how an SBIR can help, like how the National Foundation and the governmental institutions out there can help develop these kinds of technologies. So now you had this opportunity to work at an early stage startup and then also a late stage startup. Would you say that the skills that you need to succeed at either of those 2 stages are different, or they're pretty similar?
They're somewhat similar and they can be translatable because the startup environment is fast paced. Something changes every 90 seconds, right? Like that is the life of a startup, and the entrepreneurial backbone, the growth mindset of learning something new every day. It's something that you need to take with you from an early stage of startup to a late stage of startup to a Fortune 500 company. In my experience, those core values that I have and those skill sets always translate. So yes, you can translate that and have ownership. Feel that you're part of a team, you're part of a company. You own the company, you own the product, you own the project, and the success of you ultimately reflect to the success of the team. And it's all about the team. We're all here to win it. So let's do it right, and let's do it once, and let's do it smart.
That's great. Yeah. And so, Charlie, from your story, we can tell that your education and your educational background was a fundamental pathway to your career now, becoming an entrepreneur. But we also know that there are many kids out there who don't think that college is worth it. And a lot of people want to become the next Steve Jobs, and they think that they don't have to go to college to do that. What is your take on that, and what advice would you give to somebody who is looking to become an entrepreneur like you?
Yeah, I love the story of Steve Jobs. I love the story of Mark Zuckerberg. I love the story of Bill Gates. They were pioneers in their field. Yes, they didn't went through school, but you have to remember that they're coming from a different pool set of people, right? Bill Gates, had the support of William Gates. I know his story relatively well because I'm in the Pacific Northwest, and William was an educated, relatively wealthy person that gave support to Bill. So he had the opportunity to take the risk to assemble and create Microsoft. Same applies for Mark. Same applies for, relatively to Steve Jobs. But they are the outliers. They are the dreamers, the ones that only few makes it. And I'm not saying that if you don't have the education, you will not make it, because that will be a big lie. But it might take you a little bit extra effort to get there. Education, usually what it does is allow you to see frameworks and put frameworks around problems. Solving a problem to the time that I was developing nanoparticles in China helped me to take that and put it into, hey, we're building this ultrasound medical device to diagnose for middle ear infection. That is the work that I was doing at Autonexus Medical Technology. The framework, the way that you solve complex problems and breaking it down into tangible and achievable milestones. And every day is a little of success. Those are the things that you learn during the school. And, you don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to be a physicist. But going through the school educational system allow you to create those soft skills that allow you to succeed. A lot of people go to business school for that reason, because they want to learn, the lingo. They want to learn, create a network. The greatest friendships that I have in my life so far, they're friends that I either went to school with or met them through these scientific engineering ecosystem, right?
That's how we met.
That's how we met. Exactly. Your husband and myself, we were all funded by the National Academy of Science Ford Fellowship, and we both fellows. And that's how we met. And here we are talking, sharing the knowledge with the next generation of Latin powerhouses, because that's who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great advice, right? And then also, I can think myself also, when I started working, for example, in industry, I would come up with problems that I had to solve. And, I realized that having gone through grad school and having gone through 5 years of problem solving and trying to understand what works and what doesn't, really made me able to solve a problem in 10 minutes. But if I were an undergrad and I only had my experience, my 1 year of undergraduate research, and I had been in that same position, I would have not be able to solve that problem that quickly if I hadn't gone to grad school and had that training. At the end of the day, that's what it is training, right?
Yeah. And it also gives you that, reputation and the degrees create a weight, right? That validation in front of the rest of the community. I'm not smarter or brighter or more innovative than anybody else. I'm actually consider myself one of the person that like to be in a room where I am the dumbest person in the room, because I want to learn. When you communicate with others and say like, hey, yeah, you know what? I was a scientist in my previous life, but that doesn't make you smarter or dumber than anybody else. It's just people just sees you through different lens. And, we want to make sure that we always put the best foot forward. Yeah. That is the thing. We always put the best foot forward. So I encourage everybody to pursue education. All my mentees, my close family members, my sister, I empower and I promote and I advocate that we need to obtain higher education.
Mm. And it might be difficult, especially in this country. It's expensive and it's difficult to attain. But hopefully you are an example of how it is possible. There are opportunities out there. And if you don't know where to find them, you can start by reaching out to us and we can point you in the right direction.
Exactly. We're here to support you. We're cheering from the sidelines. We are opening doors for you guys. So come into the room, do a great job, so you can open the doors for the next wave of engineers, scientists, business entrepreneurs. We're here to help you. Reach out. I'm always happy to make time to connect with anybody and guide you to the steps I already took.
Thank you so much, Charlie. And thank you so much for joining us in the podcast and sharing your story with our listeners.
No problem. Hey, it was a pleasure. Good luck. And I want to leave this podcast with some words that one of my great mentors said to me. He said, a goal without a plan or a strategy is only a dream. And sometimes dreams do not come true or don't become reality. So put a plan around your goals, put in a strategy around the goals, and follow with that plan and follow that strategy. You will succeed. We can do it. Let's do it together.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. And if you want to put a face to the voices you just heard, you can follow us on Instagram at LatinxCan. If you have questions or feedback for us, you can email us at latinxcan@gmail.com. And if you like this episode, please leave a review. It is the quickest way to grow as a community. Once again, thank you for listening. And remember, unidos somos más.